If you've had a concussion and feel like you're not getting better, you're not crazy, and you're not alone.
Welcome to the Brain Bros.
We're Nate Pope.
And Justin Pope.
And yes, we're brothers. We're also neurological occupational therapists.
We specialize in post-concussion syndrome, and each episode, we bring you tools, strategies, and straight answers to help you to actually recover.
Hey everybody, we're glad you're with us. Super glad to have Nate here, my brother, with us as well, and having this first Brain Bros podcast. We're excited that you're with us, and we're recording this at the tail end of Brain Injury Awareness Month. So pretty excited about that because we do want to bring awareness to brain injury, specifically what we're interested in, right? Concussions and post-concussion syndrome. With this, Nate, a lot of times they call it the invisible injury, right? And so we're going to jump into that. But before we do, I wanted to bring out maybe a couple statistics that were pretty interesting. Let me pull those up. So a lot of times with concussions, what happens is only a fraction of them are ever formally diagnosed or reported every year, which I think is pretty interesting because a lot of times we don't know how many concussions are actually happening. We know a ton are because we also know this statistic that concussions are the most common type of traumatic brain injury, making up the vast majority of TBI cases. So that's pretty interesting too. A lot of times when we think of TBI, we might not necessarily be thinking about a concussion or mild traumatic brain injury, right? So anyways, those are some of the interesting statistics that we were able to find. Also, we decided we wanted to do this a Q&A style, right? So talk about some things, talk about this invisible injury, and maybe we could just start there. Let's just jump in, right? So why invisible injury? Why does that have that name? Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from a lot of reasons, I believe, but most of the symptoms that people experience with post-concussion syndrome, or when you have symptoms after you've had a concussion that persist, they're behind the scenes. They're symptoms that are not always apparent to anyone except the individual. And the individual may even be confused as to whether they're connected to a head injury. Because let's be honest, symptoms like headaches, brain fog, fatigue, those things could be related to nutrition, some other random neck tension, or some random other cause. And so they're often wondering, what is this symptom? Where did it come from? What is it based in? What are the causes? Because they are symptoms that can have other causes. And I'm looking at the symptoms checklist here that we go through with every patient. You could have blurry vision or fatigue. I mentioned headaches. You could have a little dizziness or lightheadedness, sensitivity to light or noise. You could have emotional stuff like a little anxiety, increased worrying, or maybe depression, feeling sad, irritability just really easily. And you could have word retrieval challenges, but you find your way to, you can talk around things, or it can mess up your sleep. Any number of different things are not apparent to others, but are apparent to the individual. And so it can be an invisible injury in that sense.
Well, and a lot of these symptoms that you listed are common symptoms sometimes, even if you don't have a brain injury or a concussion, right? You may be getting an increase in headaches for whatever reason. You may have some emotional type symptoms for whatever reason. Even brain fog, for example, if I don't get enough sleep, pretty good chance the next day I'm going to have some brain fog, right? And so sometimes it's hard to know what to attribute these symptoms that we may be feeling because they are some symptoms that naturally come up quite often. Now, when we start to see a collection of these or a lot of these symptoms start piling up, that's when we might say, there might be something to this. And then given the history of concussion or whatever, put two and two together.
When you have just a handful of symptoms, it could be considered maybe a soft marker when I'm going through a symptoms checklist with someone. Maybe it's connected, maybe not.
Right.
There's about 35 symptoms on our checklist that we go through. When you have 25 of the 35,
right,
And we rank them on their severity from 0 to 6 on how significant they are to that individual. They have a lot of 3s and 4s and some 5s and 6s even maybe. You're going, okay, this is no longer just some soft markers. This is more probable indicators starting to present post-concussion syndrome.
Right.
And connected with the chronology of, oh, I didn't have these symptoms, hit my head, and now I do.
Right.
That's also an added piece that tells us, oh, they're probably connected.
Right.
But there can be a delay in the symptoms, and that can also confuse things and make it an invisible injury because they're thinking it's not connected to the concussion maybe because my symptoms came a week later or a month later sometime in some cases. So,
right.
So there's a few things that can confuse people that way about the symptoms.
Right. And I think it's nice that we have the way we go through our symptom checklist here because we're able to distinguish a lot of those things so that we don't have that misattribution of symptoms, right? We don't want to say, oh, you have headaches and you're depressed. Yep, concussion. Well, maybe they have headaches and depression from some other cause. But when we look at all of these symptoms all together, it starts to put that picture together better for us.
It helps them be validated. For the first time, they're able to start seeing a pattern. Oh, well, I did have a few of those before. I always have focus and attention issues. Maybe I have ADHD.
Right.
And I've had headaches, but both of those things got worse. And then I have all these other things, and it looks like you got 20 more added to my list. So maybe it's not just my ADHD and the headaches that I had or whatever.
Sure.
It's actually something else, and it's probably connected to my head injury.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I really enjoy when I do consultations with people here in the clinic or online is what I really find enjoyable is being able to see that in somebody when the light goes on and they're like, oh, I've had these symptoms for so long, all these symptoms, and I'm able to say, and given your history and all of these symptoms, there's a strong chance that you do have post-concussion syndrome. And then it just makes sense to them. It starts to really click with them and to see, and that's important because then that gives them hope, right? If we don't know why we're having all these symptoms, it's hard to have hope that they're going to get better.
Yes. And it's that moment when you make something that to that point has been invisible.
Right.
They haven't been able to put a finger on it, in other words.
Right.
And I've really enjoyed that experience, especially when we're a spouse or a parent or someone is with them. And they also go through that. Oh, that's what you've been going through.
Right. So it's invisible to the other people in their life.
This is a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool to have that initial validation of that this is a real thing and it exists. Which is where you have to get to first before we come in and offer the even more exciting part of, oh, by the way, we can treat this.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I have a question for you then. So let's talk about brain scans. Some people think that, how does this relate to the invisible injury? People going in and getting brain scans if they feel like they have a concussion.
Sure. That only reinforces the invisible injury concept because almost all mild traumatic brain injuries or concussions are invisible on an MRI or on any type of imaging. The imaging out there that is mostly used traditionally is looking for structural issues. Brain bleeds, scar tissue, there's lesions, there's different things structurally that they can look at. There's some bright spots that pop up and are red flag things on an MRI. When you look at the MRI for almost all patients who have just had a concussion, it will look totally normal. Your brain is fine. They use the words unremarkable. I think that's kind of rude about the brain.
Unremarkable.
But that's neurologist term for...
Just so you know, brains are remarkable. They really are.
Yes. But in neurologist terms, it's like saying there's nothing here that stands out. And that's what almost all of them are. So that reinforces the invisible injury thing because then they go away feeling pretty hopeless. I was hoping to find the cause of all of my symptoms, like what's going on with me.
Right.
And they just went to someone who says, well, you're fine.
Right.
From the brain scan standpoint, you're fine. And
which has got to be so
So frustrating. Yes.
I know what I know. I know that I'm feeling the way that I am. I'm not crazy.
Right. And what I wish they were told, what I wish everyone was told at that point is, we're not seeing anything structural here. So what you want to start considering is there may be functional problems going on with your brain. In other words, the brain tissue's fine, but maybe there's some functioning that isn't working quite right since you've hit your head. You should talk to a concussion specialist and lead them in that direction and not leave it at, your brain looks fine. So,
right. Well, and another thing that we see, since we're talking about medical professionals too,
Yeah.
right, is quite often, just one example. So I had somebody come in for a consultation and just recently, and they were so validated by obviously what we were talking about, the symptoms. And I do have something. They were
Yeah.
really validated by that. But also, they knew they had had a concussion and that some of the symptoms were related to that. But their healthcare provider said something along the lines of, well, you're probably about as good as you're going to get. That's the impression that they left them with, was you're kind of stuck
yes.
here with what you got. So I think that's what we offer here, right, is hope to those
Yeah.
people, which is awesome.
Yes.
And just to know that this invisible injury isn't invisible to us. We see it, and that's what we want to help with.
For sure. And we do have some that come in that have been told correctly and actually are referred to us by other medical professionals who do recognize it and
Yeah.
see it. And so
That's
it's
the
really,
majority, I should say.
Sure.
I think
So
it's changed.
It's changing, and it's like we're excited about how a lot of people are starting to get it right. It's still discouraging that a lot get it wrong, and it's hard for those patients who come in, like you say, and because we still have a lot of them that come in and say, I was told pretty much I've got what I've got. And the traditional approaches to treating this really are, let's figure out how to deal with this, not fix it.
Right.
They're what we would consider adaptive or compensatory approaches. So let's find a way to live with it.
Right.
If you have light sensitivity, sunglasses. If you have headaches, sleeping problems, medication.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression, ADHD, all of these medication is the answer for it. Memory issues, you got to write everything down. Now, you got to be more organized.
Right.
Those are all live with it approaches.
Right.
And that's the vast majority of the treatment options that people have been working with. And unfortunately, then they deserve more because recovery is possible.
And a lot of times those things that you're talking about are kind of counterintuitive, right? We think that, oh, my eyes are sensitive to light, I'll just put on shades. But that's not what we try and do here, right? We try and help you get past that, get that remediation there. Whatever the symptom is, we don't want you just compensating for that. That's not a way to live, right? If we can affect the quality of life through getting better, we want to do that.
If it's a functional problem, what that really also means is that your brain is fine in terms of the healthy tissue. So it ought to be able to do what it's not yet doing. Yeah. And it ought to be able to function in a different way.
Sure.
But it is a creature of habit, and so it requires a certain type of treatment that is more intense than what most are getting and targets many areas of the brain simultaneously to really engage the brain. And that's getting into the details of things a little bit, but it needs a different treatment and different frequency. And if it's treated the right way, though, most of our patients, almost without exception, make significant recoveries.
Sure.
So there's a ton of hope, I guess, is the main message with that.
Right. Absolutely. And we had talked about this earlier, but one reason that it's also called the invisible injury is sometimes we have individuals that aren't sure if they even have a concussion because they're saying, well, I didn't hit my head, right?
Yes.
So what do you say to somebody that we would talk to, say, that has a lot of these symptoms, but they're like, but I didn't hit my head, so is it a concussion?
So they keep looking for answers outside of the concussion realm because they didn't hit their head.
Yeah.
But what's important to realize, and that many don't realize, is you don't have to hit your head to get a concussion.
It's that rapid deceleration effect that causes the concussion. Sometimes just a big jolt can happen. So for example, in sports, you could get hit playing football and either hit the ground without even hitting your head, but that jolt of the whiplash itself can cause enough force on the brain, right, to cause a concussion.
The brain is made of different densities. So some tissues are more or less dense than others. So when it's going at one speed and then stops, or it's stopped and then it gets hit and it goes really fast, that's an acceleration injury.
Right.
And it's change of speed. And when that happens, parts of the brain move in a different way because they're more or less dense.
Yeah.
So it creates some stretching in there.
There's some shearing forces that happen.
And the long parts of the neurons can get stretched. That causes a neurochemical electrical storm that can knock certain neural pathways offline. It can disrupt how the brain was working normally. And the blood flow pattern gets changed, which is what the research is showing with functional MRI results. You can see, oh, now we're getting less blood to certain neural pathways in certain areas than you would ever see in a non-concussed person. And we're getting more blood in other areas maybe that you would never see in a non-concussed person.
Right.
And so you can see, oh, we've got a functional problem here.
Right.
They also had a regular MRI that says they're fine. But this functional MRI is really showing some problems here.
Sure.
But those are fixable, which is the good part.
Right. Well, I think we've had a good discussion here. And I think that we could go on for a long time about this, but I think we've hit the points that we really want to hit with this, and realizing that hopefully this invisible injury, it is not as invisible. Hopefully we can bring some awareness to this and in helping people see that this is real and there is hope out there to be able to get through these things, not just get through them, but to heal and see actual improvements and remediation.
And a big takeaway should be, first of all, awareness that it's real. What you're going through is real. Validation. You're not alone. It's happening to a lot of people. The second awareness that we would love for people to realize is that there's treatment that works, and it really does work. And we would love to be a part of that, actually. So
absolutely.
And we have further episodes that can explain more of that, and also some things that you can do to help out at home. And
sure.
And we're excited for future episodes as well.
Thanks for joining us with Brain Bros.